we begin with a public hearing regarding the consideration of resolution amending the previously approved appropriation and borrowing authorization of $225,000 for replacement of the boiler and roof repair at the Cheshire Community Pool to increase the appropriation and borrowing authorization by $100,000 for an aggregate of $325,000. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Peter Talbot.
Here.
Don Walsh. Here. David Velaber. John Milone. Fiona Pearson. Here. Tricia Kramer. Here. Greg Wolf. Here. Dina Allard. Here. And Jim Jenks. Here. A quorum is present.
We're going to, because it's not on the official public hearing agenda, we're going to hold it to the regular meeting, and then you can all join me in the pledge. For now, the explanation of the hearing procedure and agenda is that we will get the reading of the legal notice, the presentation on the hearing subject, and then open it to public comments. Public comments will be 3 minutes at the podium, name and full address prior to speaking. And with that, I will call on the clerk to read the legal notice, please.
The Town Council of the Town of Cheshire shall hold a public hearing at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, February 11th, 2025, in Town Council Chambers, 84 South Main Street, Cheshire, Connecticut, 06410, to consider the following resolution. The resolution amending the previously approved appropriation and borrowing authorization of $225,000 for replacement of the boiler and roof repair at the Cheshire Community Pool to increase the appropriation and borrowing authorization by $100,000 for an aggregate of $325,000. Electors and citizens will be heard at this public hearing concerning these dated at Cheshire, Connecticut, this 15th day of January.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Anyone that would like to address the council regarding the public hearing topic, please do so at this time. Going once, going twice. Public hearing is closed. Which brings us to our regular meeting of Tuesday, February 11th. We have already called the roll. There are no changes in the roll call. So now I will ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Which brings us to item 3, public communication, and A, public comments. Two things before we start with that. The town's public statement regarding the animal control facility, as well as consent order updates for both December and January, are on the town website at www.cheshirecT.org/182/animal control. The Cheshire Town Council has, since late last year, been contemplating a full investigation of matters related to the town's custody of dogs seized due to abuse in October 2022. Due to ongoing litigation in both Superior and Bankruptcy Court, commencement of the investigation was delayed. The withdrawal of the defendant's counterclaim in the Superior Court case was filed with the court on January 30th, 2025. Within days of that withdrawal, a highly qualified and experienced investigator was engaged to conduct an independent third-party investigation. To ensure the integrity of this investigation, we will have no further comment until the investigation is concluded. This town council is a group of volunteers. We were elected by the citizens of Cheshire, and we swore an oath that we will faithfully discharge, according to law, the duties of the office. We have all been true to that oath. We have listened for what will be 3 meetings now to your concerns, consistent with our duties, albeit to the frustration of many of us. We have been forced to sit silent in the face of verbal and social media attacks. Because of ongoing legal matters, public discussion of which would undermine the town's interests, we have had to remain silent. In addition, personnel matters involve people who have contractual rights under collective bargaining agreements and trigger various statutory provisions and laws. We do not discuss personnel matters in public. Now, to ensure the integrity and objectivity of the investigation, we as a council will not engage in a public discussion of these matters. As I stated at the meeting in December, everyone at this dais is a pet owner. The vast majority own or have owned rescue dogs. Do not interpret our limited remarks as a lack of caring or empathy. With that, I will allow the public to make comment. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please state your name and full address before speaking.
Good evening. I am Robin Zilla Canamella, 135 Riverton Road, Winstead, Connecticut, and 33 Silverbrook Road, Sandusfield, Massachusetts. I am the co-founder and president of Desmond's Army Animal Law Advocates. On October 31st, I copied all of you in this email to Attorney General Tong and Commissioner Hurlburt, inclusive of several DOAG reports and evidential photographs. It is a timeline of your office's respective notice on this matter. Some highlights of this email read, again, you were all included in this email. There was never any response, not even to say received. Dear Attorney General Tong and Commissioner Hurlburt, I am once again reaching out about the allegations of animal cruelty against ACO April Leeler. As you know, the dogs at issue are part of an animal cruelty case that has been pending for over 2 years. The dogs were entrusted to the care of ACO Leeler and the town of Cheshire on October 6, 2022. Animal control officers are subject to the same laws in Connecticut as every other individual. In my view, they are to be held to even a higher standard given their roles and responsibilities for those who have no voice. It is abundantly clear that Leeler committed wrongdoing. Both of your agencies, all of your agencies, are aware and have been for some time. I am again requesting that your agencies take action as mandated by law and your respective positions. You have been on notice for several months by advocates. DOAG has been on notice for years, evidenced by the inspection reports and prior complaints. Appropriate consequences must be imposed. Lily and Nene's death cannot be forgotten or ignored. Also included in this email was the full general statute 22-33-5, removal of municipal animal control officer and complaint against municipal animal control officers. The language is all in the email. Desmond's Army Animal Law Advocates will continue to work shoulder to shoulder with the Cheshire Dog Advocates and other animal advocate agencies to see justice served here and anywhere else animals are mistreated, neglected, and abused. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda Pleva. I'm the Vice President of Desmond's Army. I live at 23 Norton Place, Plainville, Connecticut. An animal control officer holds a position of public trust and responsibility, tasked with enforcing laws that protect animals from neglect and abuse. When such an officer fails in their duty, as is the case with Cheshire's animal control officer, who neglected 32 dogs under her care, resulting in the tragic death of 2, justice must be served. This blatant cruelty and negligence warrants criminal charges, not only to hold her accountable, but also to set a precedent that no one, especially those entrusted with animal welfare, is above the law. In Connecticut, animal cruelty is a criminal offense. The cases of severe neglect leading to suffering or death can result in felony charges. The officer's actions, or lack thereof, demonstrate clear violations of state animal welfare laws. Failing to provide adequate food, water, shelter, grooming, and medical care to animals in her custody constitutes gross negligence. The fact that 2 dogs died as a direct result of her neglect further solidifies the need for legal consequences. If an ordinary citizen had been responsible for such mistreatment, they would undoubtedly face criminal prosecution. An officer who should be held to even higher ethical and professional standards should face no less. Additionally, the town council, who knew about this neglect, is, in my opinion, equally culpable and should also be held responsible. Allowing this officer to escape serious legal repercussions would send a dangerous message that those in positions of power are immune to the very laws they are meant to enforce. Her criminal record should reflect the severity of her actions to prevent her from ever again working in the capacity related to animal welfare. The justice system must ensure that her neglect does not go unpunished, both for the sake of the animals who suffered and to prevent future cases of similar misconduct. Animal cruelty is not just a moral failing, but a serious crime that demands accountability. The arrest and prosecution of this officer would serve as a reminder that those entrusted with protecting animals must uphold the highest standards or face consequences when they fail.
That's
Just one
time,
other
ma'am.
thing.
Thank you.
One more sentence?
One more sentence.
Just, I would like to put on the record here that Miss Ulizio, who I don't see her here tonight, she's been at each meeting prior. She, on the meeting at December 10th, stated that she was a member of Desmond's Army. She has not ever been. She is not currently, nor will she ever be, a member of our organization. I would like that on your record, please.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. My name is Mariah Melendez. I live at 1425 Waterbury Road. Some of you may remember me. I used to be a reporter here, so hey, guys, nice to see you again. Thank you for being here tonight. I know you guys work really hard, and I just have a few things to say on the matter. My mom and I started this cause because we really care about animals, so here is what I have to say tonight. So we're here, obviously, to talk about a very serious matter. Over the past 4 months, my group has gathered very compelling, corroborated evidence that exposes systemic neglect, mismanagement at the ACO facility. We've spoken about that before. I'm going to just very briefly talk about what we've found. I know you guys already have copies of the evidence that we've sent you. First and foremost, the documents and communications that we have. We have email copies previously sent to every town council member that show a Meriden veterinarian complained about the neglect or the negligent condition of Tiny, AKA Nene, by the ACO. This complaint was sent in around April or May 2023. It included photos of the neglected animal and was forwarded to DOAG. There were also photos of Lily, the other dog, and neglect of other dogs in the facility. Recently, the town has been given additional veterinary records and emails from our FOIA requests, which confirm details we've already obtained from independent sources about these neglected dogs. The second is our whistleblower testimonies and FOIA evidence. The DOAG has interviewed several whistleblowers who have worked at or are closely connected to the Cheshire Pound. Their testimonies are supported by emails, we obtained via FOIA, along with videos and photographs that were provided to both DOAG and the town council. Moreover, these whistleblowers and other concerned parties have spoken directly with the town attorney regarding these negligence issues. Third and lastly is our growing evidence pool. Our group has clearly expanded. Residents have come forward with emails, pictures, texts, stories. Some of this proof includes metadata confirming its authenticity. Despite this flood of evidence, the town has not sought witness accounts or documentation. In fact, the town attorney only recently requested a whistleblower preserve their evidence, not all of them, a full year after the initial complaints, and the town's press release denies negligence. Because witnesses have feared retaliation from the ACO and local police, we've removed personally identifying information before sharing the evidence publicly, even from the ACO documents, but provided it to the town and to the state. Despite the substantial evidence, the town's council press release also claims that the town pound staff allegations are understood and taken very
Ms. Melendez.
seriously. Yep, just one more word or sentence. Especially in denying culpability. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members and community attendees. My name is Patricia Venice, 35 Cambridge Drive, Cheshire. We have gathered credible evidence from multiple sources, emails, photographs, veterinary records, and firsthand testimonies that clearly shows prolonged neglect and poor treatment of animals in town custody. These issues are not isolated. They represent a pattern of inaction and mismanagement that has persisted for far too long. Consider the timeline. In February 2023, multiple complaints were filed regarding animals such as Lily and Tiny, also known as Nene. These complaints were not only to the town council, but also directly to the Department of Agriculture. Department of Agriculture subsequently launched an investigation based on these complaints, resulting in a formal decree that mandated some immediate changes, though it left the staffing issues unresolved. Now note the nature of evidence. We have verified emails showing that every council member was alerted early on about the conditions in the pound. Whistleblowers and volunteers have provided consistent accounts backed by photos and veterinary records of animals living in unsanitary, dangerous conditions, and suffering from delayed or denied medical care. This presentation is not an attempt to sensationalize, it is an effort to document and persist a systemic failure that has been overlooked for too long. I respectfully ask that you each give your full attention to each one of us as we speak here tonight. I now turn the stage over to Speaker 3, who will explain how this evidence was gathered and verified.
Good evening. My name is Holly Fontaine. I live at 35 Elizabeth Lane, Vernon, Connecticut. I will now explain the scope, collection methods, and verification of the evidence we have assembled. First, emails and documentation. Through FOIA requests, we obtained detailed email records showing that complaints about the pound's condition were sent to every town council member. These emails included accurate data stamps and confirmations from various parties, such as the Meriden veterinarian who documented Tiny's condition. Second, firsthand testimonies. Multiple whistleblowers, both current and former employees and volunteers, have provided detailed firsthand accounts describing how they witnessed animals left in soiled, unsafe conditions with inadequate food and delayed veterinary care. For their protection, identifying details were originally redacted, though the town has received the full information. The consistency across these testimonies reinforce our findings. Third, veterinary records. We have obtained records from local veterinarians, including detailed examination notes and photographs. These documents clearly show issues such as severe dental disease, untreated infections, and malnourishment among the animals under the pound's care. Cross-referencing these emails, testimonies, and veterinary records confirms that evidence is both consistent and credible. Our objective is not to create controversy, but to shine a light on the pattern of neglect that has persisted for far too long. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, next person's Lori.
Hello, my name is Lori Russo, 35 Plum Hollow Way, Berlin, Connecticut. I will now address the Town Council's recent press release, which claimed that, quote, dogs were evaluated as soon as symptoms appeared, unquote, and that they, quote, received appropriate care, unquote. However, our evidence tells a different story. Our email records indicate that there was a 4-day delay before Lily received the necessary vet care for her injuries. In the case of Tiny, repeated reports and photographic evidence shows that he was left in conditions no animal should ever endure, such as urine-soaked bedding, severe dental decay, and untreated eye infections. Moreover, the press release notably omitted mention of a tragic case, a puppy conceived and born in the pound that later died. This omission suggests a deliberate effort to conceal uncomfortable truths about the facility's conditions. Such discrepancies between the official narrative and our documented evidence underscore systemic failures that cannot be dismissed as more administrative errors. These contradictions make it clear that the town's narrative does not align with the reality documented by independent sources and your own records. I now pass the floor to Speaker 5, who will detail newly revealed records exposing additional problems in record keeping and funding.
Good evening. My name is Lorraine Sarno. I live at 321 South Cherry Street in Wallingford. I will focus on newly disclosed records that reveal critical failures in record keeping and financial management at the facility. Specifically, from April through September 2024, multiple monthly and annual reports have either been missing or was submitted months later. Internal emails show that several employees repeatedly requested these missing documents, and the Department of Agriculture has noted similar lapses from the ACO in all 3 towns where she worked. One email even indicated that after waiting a year, the ACO was told she could simply report 0 for missing data. We have documented cases where important records, such as the citation ticket for a Haddam case, were lost or misplaced by ACO April Learler, further complicating legal and operational proceedings. On the financial side, emails indicate that checks were routinely made payable to Cheshire Animal Shelter Volunteers, CASV, contradicting the town's claims that no external funding was involved and that no nonprofit supports the pound. Additionally, a tax return from the CSSV revealed that significant funds over $50,000 in 2015 were available, yet there is a complete lack of transparency regarding how these funds were managed or applied to animal care. Just 2 weeks ago, invoices were charged to this account. This pattern of missing, altered, or delayed documentation highlights not only poor administrative practices, but may also indicate a deliberate concealment of evidence. Such irregularities severely undermine accountability. I now turn the floor to Speaker 6.
Good evening. My name is Marina Bagliori, 1191 Meriden Avenue, Southington, Connecticut, and I will be talking today about discuss 2 emblematic cases, Teeny, who also known Nene, and Lily, which clearly illustrates the coincidence of systematic rejecting. Case of Teeny, Nene. Teeny is a Shih Tzu who was suffering from severe dental disease, chronic eyes infection, and raw, inflamed skin resulting from constant exploding to urine. Despite clearly veterinary recommendation, the Teeny required a diet of vet food because of his dental issue. He was persistently fed hard kibbles, what he couldn't not chew. At necropsy, Teeny's stomach was found empty, in a heartbreaking condition of prolonged neglect and inadequate feeding. Now we're going to case of Lily. Lily was injured on February 6, 2023, yet did not receive veterinary care until February 12, a delay that critically worsened her condition. Although she was prescribed medications such as steroid, essential diagnosis for X-ray and MRI was not performed. By July, Lily's condition was deteriorating at a point where she euthanized because of only human option. These cases are not isolation incidents. They form from a broader pattern of neglect and mismanagement in the facility. The documented suffering of these animals is a direct result of systematic failure in providing timely and proper care. And just my words from this. We have vet records, and I read, and you've been receive them, and speaking of which, what you all animal lovers, and I understand this, but knowing these records, what we have in the system, I don't know how you can sleep at night, because I lost my sleep when I read these records and become sick after I read this description from the vet records. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lori Ratchelis, and I reside at 42 Harrison Road here in Cheshire. And I will now focus on the broader consequences of neglect, particularly for puppies born at the pound and other affected animals. First, if we consider the case of the puppies born at the shelter in August 2024, evidence emerged that dogs were allowed to breed within the municipal facility. One puppy died shortly after birth, and several others suffered from conditions such as yeast ear infections and urine scalding. The fact that breeding occurred in an environment with such poor standards speaks volumes about the lack of oversight and humane care. Next, let's consider the case of Bimbas, also known as Circles. This animal required dental surgery and a specialized diet. Yet significant weight loss occurred because intervention was delayed until an inspection forced action. Such delays are not mere oversights. They represent a systematic failure to provide prompt and essential care. Additionally, 2 stray cats received emergency treatment totaling over $2,300 before they were euthanized, while similar treatable conditions in the seized dogs were largely ignored. These examples reinforce that the neglect at the facility is not isolated, but systematic. It affects every animal under its care and highlights a pervasive failure to meet even the most basic standards of animal welfare. I now pass the floor to Speaker 8, who will examine the role of leadership and oversight in these ongoing failures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Lori Barnes. I reside at 532 East Johnson Avenue in Cheshire. I will now address the systematic failures in leadership and oversight that have allowed these issues to persist unchecked. Key issues include repeated complaints and photographic evidence of neglect were brought to the attention of both the police department and town management, yet no decisive action was taken for nearly 4 months. The actions of the animal control officer, such as withholding clean or appropriate food and delaying essential veterinary care, went largely unchallenged by supervisors. In many instances, missing or falsified records obscured the true extent of the neglect. Furthermore, a culture of fear has developed. Volunteers and whistleblowers have reported instances of intimidation and retaliation when raising concerns. This hostile environment discourages transparency and accountability. I can't say the word accountability, allowing poor practices to persist without consequence. Finally, transparency is critical. A properly run municipal shelter must maintain timely, accurate records and provide open channels for reporting issues. The documented failures in oversight indicate a serious breakdown in these systems, which not only affects animal welfare, but also exposes the town to legal and ethical liabilities. I now pass the floor to Speaker 9, who will outline the legal and ethical implications for the town.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes.
Good evening. My name is Peter Melendez, 1425 Waterbury Road, Cheshire, Connecticut. Legal and ethical implications. Good evening. I will now explain the legal and ethical implications of failures we have documented. From a legal perspective, under Connecticut animal cruelty laws, CGS 53-247, failing to provide basic care and necessary sanitary conditions can result in criminal charges. Our evidence demonstrates that animals were malnourished, kept in unsanitary kennels, and denied prompt medical attention. They were left matted, covered in excrement and urine, with rotted teeth and infected mouths. It is proven that the town knowingly ignored these issues. Municipal liability could arise, leading to financial repercussions that burden taxpayers through legal settlements or fines. From an ethical perspective, public officials have a duty to protect those in their care. The repeated neglect, lack of transparency, poor record keeping, and mismanagement of funds, including mishandling of public donations, represent a significant breach of that duty. Furthermore, misallocation of funds undermines public trust in the institutions responsible for animal welfare, violating ethical responsibility to ensure that resources are used solely for the benefit of these vulnerable animals. In summary, these actions not only contravene legal standards, but they also erode the ethical foundation upon which public service must stand. I now pass the floor to speaker number 10, who will outline corrective actions and demands.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez.
Hi, my name is Jean Melendez. I have no voice. I might be happy about that, but I'll do the best I can. 1425 Waterbury Road. I think we covered a lot, so I'll wrap up with a few statements. We, the town and the advocates, we do understand that there are some things that the council can't talk about. What we don't understand is when you make a public statement, even though you have information, that public statement is not accurate. That is frustrating, and that is something that we can't abide by. So I want to clarify, we know you have a role, we have a role. But that role should be honesty and communication when you can, but not statements that make it seem that everything was fine, because we all know everything wasn't fine. In closing, I want to summarize the undeniable evidence and our final call to action. You've seen documented proof from these segments. We haven't been able to do that before. It's really difficult to have such a large group of volunteers talk in 3-minute sections. We've detailed instances of delayed medical care, missing and altered records, financial irregularities. One thing that we didn't mention is in the email FOIAs that we received, some of the complaints that both staff and residents made. The ACO, April Leeler, actually reported their private HIPAA information, calling them developmentally disabled, calling out their mental illnesses in writing to sort of malign their complaints. These are things that if you are going to do a comprehensive independent investigation, they're in your own records. In light of the overwhelming evidence, because these failures have not only endangered the lives of those animals like Tiny and Lily, and there's another dog named Winnie that we didn't get a chance to talk about, we want there to be a comprehensive look. We want immediate termination of the ACO. You'll do your investigation. You'll look at the evidence that you have and haven't looked at so far. We want removal of the direct supervisor. I have to tell you, in all the records we have, I don't have one supervisory record. We understand that there are some supervisory forms that are being created, but what happened for the last 2 years? Many of us have been in that pound. We knew what it smelled like. We knew what it sounded like. What happened? We would like you to initiate a third-party audit covering all shelter
Time,
records.
Ms. Melendez.
Pardon?
Time.
Okie dokie. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, a totally different topic, but my name is Marjorie Chapman. I live at 15 Stonehenge Place in Cheshire, Connecticut. And I would really, first of all, like to thank all of you for the time and dedication you give to this effort. So thank you, council members. It truly is astounding how much time you give. Secondly, I come here to you to ask your support for item I on your agenda, which is a proposal for a compost, what we're calling the community compost facility at Boulder Knoll Community Farm. The story of this facility project is one of grassroots citizens seeing a potential problem and seeing an opportunity to solve a problem and presenting a plan to do so. The plan is an aerobic compost facility, 4-bin, solar-powered, blowing air through the compost facility, the bins, so that we can create compost. What it solves is for Boulder Knoll Farm, of course, it provides some wonderful soil amendment. For the town, we are currently in what I call a solid waste crisis. And evidently, from stats, and you can check me on this one, 30% of Connecticut solid waste is organic waste, which means it has the potential to become compost. So we are paying to ship out of Cheshire this valuable commodity, really. And this facility will take that commodity, certainly on a small scale right now, but as a model, and turn it into a rich soil amendment. It's kind of a win-win-win. The other part of this facility is it will become an educational center for the value of composting and this kind of zero waste sustainability. I urge you to support us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Chapman.
Hi, my name is Maura Mirko. I live at 91 Linwood Drive Extension. I'd like to go back to the dogs. So in October 2022, the police did a wonderful thing and removed those dogs from that home that was, you know, overcrowded and had an abuser. And that's what we expect, and I couldn't be more proud that they did that. Unfortunately, the rest of the plan was, hey, we'll take these dogs, we'll just file a transfer of ownership, and we'll adopt them out to better homes. And I truly believe everybody's heart was in that, and that was the plan. Unfortunately, the owner screwed up that plan. She put the counterclaim in, then she filed bankruptcy, which just fueled this mess. So now, you know, now we're like, oh no, now we got these dogs, now we got all this to go through. So we all know, it's common knowledge, the court system moves frustratingly slow. At this point, those involved should have, and most likely did, know that these dogs were going to be packed like sardines at the animal control facility for a prolonged time. Probably didn't think 2 years, but definitely months. To this nightmare, the dogs were considered evidence. So this apparently meant that only the ACO and the assistant ACOs could take care of the dogs. This is way too much to ask of them, of 2 people, 32 dogs of 2 people. You'd have to be superhuman to do everything that those dogs needed on a basic level. That's just cleaning and feeding. And keep the whole facility at basic cleanliness and also go out on calls. It's just too much to ask. At this point, the ACO, assistant ACO, and their supervisors should have come up with a plan B that involved multiple people to handle the situation. You know, not to, you know, there's more than one way to do something. They should have got creative. How many times did our town's legal representation try to come to a solution about the housing and care of the dogs with the owner? Did anyone really try to advocate for these dogs? In your last press release, you said there was an advocate for the dogs. Did anybody advocate for these dogs? Or did anyone really try to advocate for these dogs? Or did we just accept whatever law or directive the lawyers gave us? I'm asking this because your latest public release didn't mention anything past filing for ownership in that first month of November, having the dogs. There's no other mention of it, just that you did it. If everyone did everything in their power to remedy this situation, you'd be screaming it from the rooftops. You'd be providing proof like it was nothing. You wouldn't be sending out vague, untrue press releases, redacted files, and remaining silent. This was an extraordinary situation, a situation that required more communication, diligence, and expertise than the status quo.
Time, Ms. Marco.
These dogs suffered needlessly. The community would have come out in droves to help. There were ways to avoid this catastrophe.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carol Ann Setter, and I live on 57 Rosemary Lane in Cheshire. Before all these wonderful people stood up to talk, we stood and we faced that flag, and we said the Pledge of Allegiance. And words in the Pledge of Allegiance is justice for all. So I believe justice for all includes animals, and I think that these dogs need justice.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Rajunas, 60 Clintonville Road, Northford. I'd like to share some policy recommendations designed to bring full transparency and accountability to the operation at the Cheshire Pound, from daily operations and record keeping to adoptions and public records. These measures are essential to restoring the public's trust and ensuring that the facility runs with the highest standards of care and integrity. First, we propose the implementation of comprehensive record-keeping protocols. Every interaction, whether it's animal intake, treatment, adoption, must be recorded in a standardized digital system. Records should be updated in real time and maintained for public access with sensitive information redacted. This centralized system will not only improve internal oversight, but will also allow community members and watchdog organizations to monitor your performance. Second, regular independent audits are critical. We recommend scheduling audits by an impartial third party that reviews financial records, operational procedures, and overall animal care. These audits should be published online or discussed in open town hall meetings, such as today, so that the public can see that the facility is held accountable for its practices. Third, transparency in the adoption process must be prioritized. The facility should maintain detailed, publicity available records on adoptions, including statistics, wait times, and post-adoption outcomes. Clear and published guidelines about the adoption criteria and process will ensure that everyone understands how animals are placed in safe homes, and it helps build trust in our system. Fourth, we must establish robust public reporting and communication channels. This means releasing quarterly or annual reports that detail key metrics such as intake numbers, medical treatments, and any disciplinary actions taken. An online dashboard that tracks these metrics in real time could also provide the community with a clear window into the facility's operations. Fifth, an independent oversight board is vital. This board should be comprised of community members, animal welfare advocates, and independent experts. They will have the authority to review operations, monitor compliance with established protocols, and make recommendations for real-time corrective actions. By including community representation, the board ensures that local residents have a direct voice in the ongoing management of this facility. Six, we need to implement whistleblower policies that encourage transparency. Secure, anonymous reporting channels must be set up with strict anti-retaliation measures in place. This way, staff, volunteers, and community members can report any misconduct or neglect without fear of reprisal.
Can you wrap it, please?
Okay.
You're at time. Thank you.
Thank you for your attention, and I thank you for all that you are doing for our animals. And I want you to know the picture behind you has Cheshire at its glory with dogs on the green.
Thank you.
Hello there, folks. My name is Jim Block, 60 Contour Drive, Cheshire. I'm reading a statement tonight on supervision of animal control. A pound supervisor who's failed in supervision and whose team members have abused animals must first acknowledge the deep failures and then take decisive, transparent, and systemic steps to turn the situation around. Here are several key steps such an individual should consider. The supervisor must publicly acknowledge the failures and oversight, the harm caused by the abusive practices. This includes an honest admission of mistakes, a sincere apology to the community and to those affected, both animals and the public, and a commitment to change. Conduct an internal review to determine exactly how and why abuses occurred. If the supervisor is directly implicated in mismanagement, they need to step aside or resign as part of a broader leadership change. Identify and discipline or remove staff who have abused animals so that accountability is clear and no one is allowed to continue abusive practices. Cooperate with an independent investigation to review all practices at the pound. This may include inviting third-party audits and inspections to ensure that past abuses are fully understood and that the clear, unbiased recommendations for change are generated. Establish an independent oversight board that includes community members and external animal welfare experts to monitor ongoing operations. Develop and mandate rigorous training for all staff and supervisors in proper animal care, ethical conduct, and professional behavior. This training should include protocols for handling animals humanely, proper record keeping, and customer service. Reinforce a culture where continuous improvement and accountability are the norm. Training should also address respectful communication and how to handle concerns from the public or whistleblowers without intimidation. Revise and strengthen policies regarding daily operations, environmental hygiene, record keeping, and the adoption process. This might include installing a digital system for real-time updates, a stricter cleaning and food storage protocols, and comprehensive emergency response guidelines. Ensure that these new policies are widely publicized within the organization and the community so everyone knows what standards are and what to expect. Commit to regular open reporting on changes in progress. This might include quarterly public reports, town hall meetings, and an online dashboard that tracks key performance indicators related to animal care and facility operations. Create and secure anonymous channels for staff, volunteers, and the public to report concerns, ensuring whistleblower protections are in place so everyone feels safe coming forward. Immediately address the physical conditions of the pound, clean up unsanitary conditions, repair or replace equipment, create an environment that is safe, comfortable for animals and staff. Regular independent inspections of the facility should be scheduled to ensure that these ongoing improvements are maintained over time. Develop a culture where regular performance evaluations, both of staff and facilities operations, are conducted with an eye toward continuous improvement. This should include feedback loops with community and external experts.
Time, Mr. Block.
Okay, well, thank you for listening, and I hope things wrap up with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Tony Bagliori, 1191 Meriden Avenue, Best Friends for Life Animal Rescue. I just want to say, I think it's great that you're all animal lovers, which means that you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing. Had I known this was going on when it was going on, I'd be down there knocking on the door. But that being said, you all must be going through the roof to see these pictures. If you're truly animal lovers and you're seeing these pictures, you'd have to be going through the roof. You have a room full of probable cause, a room full of evidence. It makes no sense why there are no charges filed. Of course, I don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes. If your ACO is still employed at this facility, I think that's a major problem. I don't see how someone who's doing these things, right? I mean, honestly, I said it before, you wouldn't keep a police officer on the job who was punching in, going out in his car and doing burglaries. It's the same thing. You're paying someone who is blatantly neglectful. And I mean, it makes no sense to spend the taxpayers' money, and it's not fair to all the animals. I mean, I'm glad I don't live in Cheshire because of things like that. It makes no sense. So if like I say, I don't know all your roles and your system, but if you're truly animal lovers, you would be going through the roof. I heard a lot of really great stuff here tonight from a lot of really great people. One thing nobody mentioned that's really disturbing that I came across, actually my wife showed me a clip from your chief of police on the news. Your chief of police thinks there's nothing wrong. He says he has complete confidence in this ACO. After all the evidence we've seen and has been presented, your chief of police, your leader, he has complete confidence in this ACO. I mean, does that spell that there's just something very, very wrong, backwards, and just wrong about this whole situation? If the chief of police has confidence in this, what kind of changes can we expect to see without going to the state? It just screams of corruption. I mean, we've all seen the evidence. you know. I mean, so your chief, basically, he failed one of the basic points of leadership, to lead by example. How are you leading by example? By condoning, I mean, basically, you're looking at all the evidence, which I didn't know this was going on when it was going on, but from everything I've seen, it's extremely disturbing, and it's extremely real. You've all seen these pictures. This isn't made up. They're not fake pictures. It's all very real. And as animal lovers, like I said, you'd have to be going through the roof. And your chief is just saying he has complete confidence in this. So it's just very backwards and baffling to me. As a rescue person, so these animals didn't die in vain. I would hope that something positive comes out of this. I mean, as far as restructuring your system, hiring yourself a real ACO that really cares, you know, I would hope that you all would reach out to rescue, and municipalities and rescue could work together, because there's certainly a lot of people that she could have reached out to.
Time, Mr. Baglieri.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to address the council this evening? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment and move on with the agenda. Thank you. Item number 4 is the approval of minutes, the minutes of the January 14th, 2025 regular town council meeting. And I believe, is that the one, is that the only one, is January 14th? Yes. Is that the only one, or is it? Because then I will do that one separately, and we'll come back to 16 and 28, if that's okay. Okay. So I will call for a motion for approval of the minutes of the January 14th regular town council meeting. Thank you, Mr. Walsh, and thank you, Ms. Pearson, for a second. All those in favor? Motion passes by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor, and abstentions, 1 abstention. So 6-0-1. 6 in favor, no opposed, and 1 abstention. Now I will accept a motion for minutes of the January 16th meeting, the town council public hearing and special meeting, and then the January 28th town council special meeting. Thank you again, Mr. Walsh, and thank you again, Ms. Pearson. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously by those present. Item number 5 is the consent calendar for February 11th. Mr. Jinks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves resolution number 021125-1. Be it resolved the Town Council approves consent calendar for February 11th, 2025 as follows, and since there's only 3 items, I'm going to actually read them this time. Acceptance and appropriation of $130 donation from Stop and Shop Bloomin' for Good program to the Human Services gift account for the Senior Center. Item B is acceptance and appropriation of a $450 donation from Mary Ann Gale to the library gift account to be used for adult and children's books, and approval of tax refunds in the amount of $1,684.81.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Do we have a second? Thank you, Ms. Pearson. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously by those present. Moving on to old business. You know, it really is, there's no correlation between old business and inviting you to the microphone,
Say the word
Mr.
old if you look
Guttenberg.
at me. That's what can I say? Good evening.
But this is our monthly school business construction update, and the floor is yours, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. We're making some good headway. We've been approving bids for both the North End and Norton projects. This Thursday, we probably will complete all of the bidding for the basic construction. There'll still be some bids down the line for FF&E, technology, and some other things. And at our last meeting in February, we're hoping to complete all of the approval of bids for the Norton project. The bids at the moment are coming in under budget, and so we're quite pleased with that. If you've been over to either of the construction sites, there's quite a bit of activity going on. At the North End site right now, the major piece of work that's happening is the drilling of the geothermal wells. They've been doing about 1.5 wells per day. There's over 60 that need to be drilled. When I was there on Thursday, they had 10 complete at that point. And they are just preparing for rebar to arrive the end of this week, and hopefully concrete to be poured starting February 18th, which is right around the corner. Norton site, tremendous change that's happened there as the site has been cleared, and a lot of soil moved around, making sure that all of the elevations are properly laid out. Some of the temporary fencing has been removed as they have cleared the site, and permanent fencing put up. As you saw with the North End site, in order to secure each of the sites, we want some permanent fencing around the entire area, and that was done immediately with the North End site. Couldn't be done immediately at Norton because of the need to clear many of the areas that were there. So as those are being cleared and moved, they're removing temporary fencing, putting the permanent fencing up. And again, at Norton, about the same schedule. We're looking at rebar arriving the end of this week. We're looking at concrete being poured starting February 18th. And then hopefully we will begin to see things moving up out of the ground. So that's where we're at the moment.
Excellent. Questions for Mr. Gussenberg, starting with Ms. Kramer.
I might have asked this question previously, but I have heightened concern over it. I know that we're getting a 50% reimbursement on the schools. I wanted to know if factors contributing to national, state level with budgets will have any effect on our expectation of being reimbursed 50% of the cost, considering the spend is not this year or next year, it's over a matter of years. How secure is our reimbursed funding?
Our basic reimbursement rate is not set by the federal government, set by the state government. I don't believe that any of those funds come directly from the federal government. It's bonded money through the state of Connecticut. The process that you go through is that you have to apply to the state. It goes to the state legislature. It's approved by each project individually, is approved by the state legislature. So it is, protected in that way. Future projects, if the state has financial issues or whatever, future projects, they could always change reimbursement rates or not approve projects. But ours has been approved through legislation, and all those reimbursable expenses should be reimbursed at the 50% rate that we've been guaranteed at this point.
Ms. Allard.
Thank you, Mr. Gussenberg. I have a question for you that was presented through social media. It's regarding the clearing at Norton School. Two questions, actually. The first one is regarding the removal of the trees. There was some concern about the fact that the plan on paper didn't actually represent how thin the layer of trees would be between the property and the houses nearby. And I was wondering if there is a plan in place already to plant some privacy hedges or something to kind of block the view between the school and the houses. Is that something that is already in the plan?
We had a public meeting on April 30th, and there was conversation at that time regarding the amount of material that needed to be removed. And there was a request at that time that a map be presented. I looked it up, and we put that onto Facebook on May 8th, so it's just about a week later. It pretty accurately shows the extent of the clearing that was going to take place. I think the reality to some people didn't realize, looking at the map, what it may entail. But when you're putting a large school onto what is not a very large piece of land, you clearly could not do that without taking out a fair number of places. I've walked the site several times. There are a few houses that, clearly have lost that wooded area that was behind them. The planting plan, to my knowledge, at this point does not include any large, areas of trees for blocking or anything like that. That could always change. When I talked to one of the supervisors for O&G, he said he had a very minimal number of concerns that have been expressed to him. One of them was someone who had responded about the number of trees. And I said that that person should put their concern in writing to the committee, and we can always take a look at doing something towards the end of the project after, we've moved ahead with all the clearing and everything.
Thank you. It was my understanding that they were not accusing anybody of taking more trees than what was planned, but that how they envisioned it on a piece of paper was different than reality, which is hard sometimes to envision.
We're also taking things out in the winter time. I think it may look a lot different when the trees are in bloom and, there's going to be a little bit more. I mean, there was a very heavily wooded area there. There were, a number of trees that were taken down and by necessity. There are also some areas that have been clearly protected. I urge you, there's a drone video that we've put onto Facebook. It also can be seen by the Cheshire School Modernization site. But there are a couple of drone pictures, one that goes over the site before we started construction, one that went over the site just a few weeks ago. You can see where there are still large numbers of trees to the north side, the east side. The west side never had many trees at all. Towards the north, the back of the site, it's been thinned out, and there's some there. But you can get a feel for what it's looking like right now. But I do think once all is said, it will look pretty good. It's just that obviously it's a major change from what was there before.
And then I have one more question regarding, you mentioned that there was temporary fencing put up, and then that was taken down and permanent fencing placed. I'm happy to hear that we are under budget, which is great, but there was some concern from the community that was being wasteful, that we took down a fence only to then put up another fence. So can you explain why we needed the temporary fence and couldn't just put up the permanent fence to begin with?
Well, the permanent fence can't be put up until you've moved the trees out of the way, in part of it. The other part, there was temporary fencing that went up to the blacktop behind the building, and then to allow the kids to continue to play there and stuff. And then that fencing was moved back. So while you're cleaning the site and getting it ready, it's changing, it's moving. And you couldn't put permanent fencing up in the middle of a heavily wooded area and then do all the work that you needed to do. So you had temporary fencing. This was all in the bid. There's no additional cost involved whatsoever. It was anticipated right from the beginning. So you had temporary fencing put up that you could move as you needed to. And now that the site is cleared, little by little, they're replacing that temporary fencing with permanent fencing, which will better protect the site through the next year and a half of construction. There's no additional cost to the town. It was all in the original bid, all planned out by the architects right from the beginning. You're welcome.
Mr. Walsh?
Just one thing, first of all, I want to thank my colleague, Ms. Allard, for jumping into the lion's den on Facebook and trying to respond to those questions, because that's not easy. And it's tough to answer these questions sometimes, but I appreciate the time that you took to do that. You did say under budget, which we all love to hear. On time as well, or ahead of schedule?
We are on time right now. We're right on schedule. Hopefully, the winter weather won't back us up at all, but so far it hasn't. The little bit of snow that we've had can't handle our big machines can handle that little bit of snow. So it hasn't been
the completion
any
date
issue.
is still like for next June?
Oh, yeah, no, June or July. We got backed up a bit because of the later approval from the state than
Okay.
what we had initially planned. So we're looking more at a July completion now than a June completion, but still plenty of time
To catch up and get into the June deadline, right?
I don't know that we're going to catch up to the June
No?
time, but we've
Okay.
talked to Dr. Solon, and he has no problem at all with the date right now. If we were to complete the building in July, when we're planning it, to be able to make the move and get the schools ready for a late August, early September opening.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, my standard thank you to you and the committee for all your continued efforts.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it.
I'll see you next month. As I said, go on to the website, and you can take a look at some of what's there. Hopefully, in the next month or two, we'll see more pictures.
And there's links to that on our website, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you. Moving on to item number 8, new business. Item A is the appointment of a steering committee for review and recommendation, re-RFP 2425-11, development of North End property. Ms. Kramer.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 021125-2. Be it resolved that the Town Council hereby establishes a Development of North End Property RFP Steering Committee to review the proposals received for RFP number 2425-11, conduct interviews, and provide a recommendation to the Town Council, and be it further resolved, said steering committee shall submit their recommendations and plans to the Town Council no later than May 2nd, 2025. And be it further resolved that with support from town staff as designated by the town manager, the following 7 residents are hereby appointed to serve on the steering committee from the present until the submittal of their recommendation. Greg Wolf, Jim Jinks, Don Walsh, Derek Gromko, David Pelletier, Patrick Wellspeak, and Lou Tedisco.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Thank you, Ms. Pearson. Discussion, Ms. Kramer.
We have received RFPs for the development of the North End property, I believe, across the street from Stonebridge Crossing. And we are putting together a steering committee to review the RFPs.
That is correct. Actually, the due date is this Friday, and so we still have a few more days till they'll come in. But yes, that's exactly right. This is the property, 58 acres, 60 acres, that we received from the state to be marketed and developed for economic development purposes. So thanks and appreciation to those willing to serve on the steering committee.
Questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Kramer, back to you for item number B, the appointment of steering committee for review and recommendation, re-RFP 2425-12, request for recreational use project, Highland Avenue.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 021125-3. Be it resolved that the Town Council hereby establishes a request for recreational use project RFP steering committee to review the proposals received for RFP number 2425-12, conduct interviews, and provide a recommendation to the town council. And be it further resolved, said steering committee shall submit the recommendations and plans to the town council no later than May 2nd, 2025. And therefore be it resolved that with support from town staff as designated by the town manager, the following 6 residents are hereby appointed to serve on the steering committee from the present until the submittal of their recommendation. Greg Wolf, Jim Jinks, Don Walsh, David Pelletier, Patrick Duffy, and Michael O'Donnell.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Do we have a second? Ms. Allard, thank you. Ms. Kramer, back to you, or actually, Mr. Kimball, probably.
Very similar to the last. Again, the due date for this RFP is also this Friday. This is the 10 acres across from the north entrance to Cheshire Park, adjacent to the prison property, which the town received way back in 1999 for possible development for recreational use only. So we are still awaiting RFP submissions. Hopefully we get some by this Friday. And if so, this will be the committee that reviews and makes a recommendation.
It's Thursday.
I'm sorry, it's this Thursday. Thank you.
You know, it's never a good move to correct the boss, you know.
I'm getting like, she's looking at me. I'm getting.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball, and thank you, Mr. Martelli.
I got the look.
Questions for either the town manager or assistant town manager? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor, motion passes unanimously by those present. Item number C, or item letter C, is the authorization to execute a sublease reassignment document and approval of an amendment to a, hang on, we're getting there. Maybe?
What's that?
Yeah, it's probably something very short. It's taking me longer to get there. Sublease agreement for the parking spaces at 48 Wallingford Road. Ms. Allard, please.
Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 021125-4. Be it resolved that the town council hereby authorizes the execution of a sublease assignment by the town, by and between the town of Cheshire, the Cheshire Grange Company, Bartlett Legal Group LLC, and Cindy's Sous Chefs LLC for parking spaces the town leases from the Cheshire Grange Company located at 48 Wallingford Road. And be it further resolved that the town council further authorizes the execution of an amendment to the sublease agreement by and between the town of Cheshire and Cindy's Sous Chefs LLC to increase the number of parking spaces subject to the sublease from 2 to 18. Therefore, be it resolved that the town manager is authorized and directed to execute on behalf of the town said documents in the form and upon the terms and conditions as presented at this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Thank you, Mr. Jinks, for the second, and I'll throw it to Mr. Martelli, who is sitting in a microphone, and I assume that means you want to speak to this one.
Yeah, I feel like I could break this down a little bit easier. There's a lot of language here. And so essentially, the town's been leasing the entirety of the Grange parking lot since 1987 for use for town staff and others used for the town hall. We have a sublease in place with Bartlett and Grippy, which is here on Wallingford Road for 2 of those spaces. So we sublease our leased area to just 2 of those spaces to Bartlett and Grippy. Bartlett and Grippy is going to be selling that property to the owners of Newbrook Kitchen, who's going to be converting that into a supper club. We've been working with them for some time, and it makes the most sense to allow for additional parking. That space, the Bartlett and Grippy property only has 9 parking spaces, and so allowing the use of the Grange parking lot, I think people are going to naturally park there anyway, so having a formal agreement with the Grange makes the most sense. Sean and I met with the master of the Grange, Mr. Ruel Miller, to discuss this with. He brought it before the full Grange board on the 5th, which they approved it. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be amending our existing sublease with the new property owner to cover 18 parking spaces. We'll still have full use of that parking area at the Grange for daytime use. And then for those of you who haven't been to to Newbrook Kitchen. It's a reservation-only type of an arrangement, so there's not just gonna be random people parking there. She'll know exactly who's gonna be using those parking spaces and on what nights. So if there's any conflicts between the town's use, we'd obviously have the first right to use those parking spaces, and then also with the Grange with their various events. And so we have all of that kind of formulated here before you tonight.
Questions for Mr. Martelli? Mr. Walsh?
As part of the lease agreement, do we take care of the plowing of that?
We do.
We do.
Yeah, so that's been in the agreement since it was originally signed by the town back in
So,
1987.
so you figured the amount that we're charging them for the 18 and just,
So what we did was we looked at what we pay the Grange, and then we divided out over the total amount of parking spaces, and then we're gonna be charging that to Newbrook Kitchen.
but you didn't add in any a little extra because we are plowing it too. I mean,
We have not, we
no,
did not do
but,
that.
okay, I just,
But we also aren't, that's gonna be, obviously, our main municipal buildings and highways and byways will be taken care of first, and then, that'll be secondary to the list of properties that are plowed.
well, I was more excited to hear that somebody told me that there was, in the basement, there were bowling alleys in the basement of that.
It's quite a structure.
Yeah, I heard it was, so, but thank you, I appreciate that.
Sure.
If I could just jump in too, there are 2 years, I believe, remaining on the sublease that's being transferred, so we do have an opportunity to revisit this in a couple of years and see how things have been going.
Further questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, motion passes unanimously by those present. Item D is the authorization to apply for an acceptance and appropriation of a STEEP grant for Mixville Park improvements in the amount of $1 million. That goes to Ms. Pearson.
Be it resolved, the Town Council approves Resolution Number 021125-5. Be it resolved that the Town Council authorizes application for the 2025 Small Town Economic Assistance Program, otherwise known as STEEP grant, administered by the State of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management, in an amount of $1 million for Mixville Park improvements, Phase 2, and be it further resolved that the Town Council agrees to allocate funds in the amount of $246,800 in the upcoming FY 2026 capital budget to fulfill a 20% match and to meet the project cost estimate should said grant be awarded. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the Town Council of the Town of Cheshire that it is cognizant of the conditions and prerequisites for state assistance imposed by CGS 4-66G Small Town Economic Assistance Program, that the filing of an application by the Town of Cheshire in an amount not to exceed $1 million is hereby approved, and that the town manager is hereby authorized and directed to execute and file such application with Connecticut OPM, to provide such additional information to execute other documents as may be required, to execute the assistance agreement with the State of Connecticut for state financial assistance if such an agreement is offered, to execute any amendments, revisions, and revisions thereto, and to act as the authorized representative of the Town of Cheshire.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson, and thank you, Mr. Jinks. Questions for Mr. Martelli? Or what, do you want to kick off discussion, Andrew? And
Sure, I'd be happy to. So this is the annual STEEP grant, which is offered by OPM. So the application is due to the state by the 20th of February, which doesn't really coincide nicely with our capital budgeting, but it is what it is. We're looking to further the renovations to Mixville Park based on concept plans which have been done and reviewed previously. The application would be for $1 million to the state and then the 20% match. Based on, in your packet, there's a list of items that we're going to be looking to do. So the ask is actually for $248,600, which exceeds the 20% match, but that is the engineer's estimate of work. So just real broadly, it's going to be adding the boardwalk, which is going to complete the ADA accessibility from the concrete walks, which have been poured recently out towards the pond. And then a suspension bridge and fishing dock. It's a removable fishing dock, which will be in the upper pond, which will be able to be pulled out by Public Works in the wintertime. Replacement of the main pavilion, and then some miscellaneous improvements, including bocce court, horseshoe pit, and park signage. So total project cost of $1,248,600 with a contingency allowance within that number.
questions for Mr. Martelli? Ms. Pearson?
I would just say, I know that Parks and Rec, having served as the liaison of their committee or commission, this is something I know that they have supported very much in the past, particularly the ADA accessibility, all of these improvements. What we've seen already is quite impressive. So I'm excited about the opportunity of applying for additional funds from OPM to support this development.
Other questions? Mr. Martelli, when do these usually get awarded, or when do we usually hear?
Sure, so it's actually the date
should
is
know this by
right
now,
in here.
too.
Yeah, it's
On or
actually in
about April 3rd, I
April.
think.
Yeah,
Okay.
award date on or about April 3rd, 2025.
Excellent. Call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously by those present. Item E is the approval of access agreement with Cheshire Pollinator Pathway for Mixville Park. Back to you, Ms. Pearson.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 021125-6. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves the access agreement with Cheshire Pollinator Pathway Incorporated for a new installation of Mixville Park property of the Town of Cheshire, and be it further resolved that the Town Council authorizes Town Manager Sean M. Kimball to execute said agreements pursuant to the terms and conditions as presented, and the approval by the Town Attorney as to form and function.
We have a motion. Thank you, Mr. Walsh, for a second. Ms. Pearson, back to you for discussion.
All I was going to say is I see that Joanna DeBeer, who was one of the co-directors of the Pollinator Pathway, I don't know if it's okay to bring her to the mic so she can talk just
Absolutely.
quickly about what it is that they plan to to do at Mixville.
Is it on? Hello, hello. Joanna DeBeer,
Just
Vice
remember, it
President.
was Fiona who
I
put you on
know.
the spot.
I'll do my best. Joanna DeBeer, 11 Shire Court, Cheshire, Vice President of the Cheshire Pollinator Pathway. I presented a plan to Parks and Rec a year and a few months ago, and got support from John and his group, and we were asked to present to the Beautification Committee. We got their blessing, and the plan basically went back and forth a bit, but it's to install a native pollinator garden at the entrance to the park. We're going to do probably a 50 by 20 patch, just because we want to keep it manageable. It's hard to get volunteers to pull weeds. And we're working with a landscape designer who specializes in native plants, so she's helping us pick the most appropriate plantings for that space. And we'll get started as soon as we can. Been waiting to get started for a while, so. Any questions?
Spring, according to Punxsutawney Phil, spring is 6 weeks from now, so.
Time is short, yes.
But I want to take the opportunity to thank you not only for what you do for the town of Cheshire, but what you do for the environment as well, because this is critically important, so thank you.
It takes a village.
Mr. Walsh?
Yeah.
First of all, thank you. I had the pleasure of sitting in on the Beautification Committee presentation, and you sound like a good group of people who are passionate about what you do, and I appreciate the passion. My concern, as always, is, like you mentioned, hard to get people to weed, hard to get the upkeep of it, because we saw several years ago what happened with the library and how it got overgrown with a lot of different plants, and it fell onto the Public Works Department to take care of it. We ended up ripping it all out. I know these aren't that kind of plantings. I mean, if worse comes to worse, we just mow it down, I guess, but hopefully that doesn't get there. But do you have a plan of, so many people will be out there on certain times, especially in the spring, summer, and fall, when weeds are prevalent?
Sure.
To take care of that, so that, especially, when people are paying to come into this park, and it's a beautiful park, I know this will add to the beauty of that park, but I just want to make sure that it stays that way, too.
Yeah, that's a great concern, and that's one of the reasons we scaled back on what we're going to install there, because it is hard to get volunteers. We also have an idea where we want to try to engage some of the neighbors in that area, try to get some extra people to buy in to beautify, keep their neighborhoods beautiful, right, and try to educate them and bring them into the fold to help us maintain it. But we do have a core group of volunteers right now where we are confident that we can maintain it until we fall over.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously by those present. Item F is the amendment of the previously approved appropriation and borrowing authorization of $225,000 for replacement of the boiler and roof repair at the Cheshire Community Pool to increase the appropriation and borrowing authorization by $100,000 for an aggregate of $325,000. This was the subject of a public hearing earlier tonight, and I will toss it to Mr. Jinks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has quite a narrative here, so get comfortable. Be it resolved, the Town Council approves Resolution Number 021125-7A. Whereas at its meeting held on July 9th, 2024, the Town Council approved resolution for fiscal year 2024-2025 CEB number 29 entitled Resolution Appropriating $225,000 for replacement of the boiler and roof repair at the Cheshire Community Pool and authorizing the issue of $225,000 bonds and notes to finance the appropriation. And whereas after opening competitive bids for the replacement of the boiler and roof repair at the Cheshire Community Pool, it has been determined that up to an additional $100,000 will be needed to complete the project due to inflationary and economic factors. And whereas in order to account for the additional cost of the project, the resolution will need to be amended and to increase the appropriation and borrowing authorization. Therefore, be it resolved, Section 1, Resolution Fiscal Year 2024-2025 CEB number 29, adopted July 9, 2024 by the Town Council entitled Resolution Appropriating $225,000 for replacement of the boiler and roof repair at the Cheshire Community Pool and authorizing the issue of $225,000 bonds and notes to finance the appropriation, which is hereby ratified, confirmed, and adopted, is amended by increasing the appropriation and bond authorization by $100,000 to a total of $325,000. Section 2, the title of the resolution is hereby replaced in its entirety by the following. Resolution appropriating $325,000 for replacement of the boiler and roof repair at the Cheshire Community Pool and authorizing the issue of $325,000 bonds and notes to finance the appropriation. Section 3. In each of sections A, B, and C of the resolution, the appropriation amount of $225,000 is hereby deleted, and the amount of $325,000 is hereby inserted in its place. Section 4, sections D and G of the resolution are hereby ratified, confirmed, adopted, and incorporated into this resolution. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves resolution number 021125-7B. Is this an additional resolution, or is it? So just continue on with this one?
Stop there.
Oh,
Continue, or I think, let's take a vote on the first one.
yeah, because the first one was 7A, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a lengthy resolution and a second.
I could explain this further if you like,
So,
but
yes.
I'm not sure it's really necessary.
If you could read it again first, that would be
Sounds-
great.
It sounds like it's fully, and we've certainly had enough discussion on this one in the past. But if anyone would like to ask any questions, now would be the time to do so.
I do have one quick question.
Mr. Walsh.
Because I know that we said, we had preliminary bids on it. We're going to have to put this out to bid again, I assume? Or do we already have bids in place that
I think if we approve it tonight, the prices are still held, but
they're still held?
Yep, that's right, Dan, correct? Should be correct. Yeah,
So we were that far off in the original amount, 30%?
that's my understanding, yeah.
Or
from the original.
35%, whatever that?
Same architect, that's right.
Oh, okay. So we don't have to put it out to bid, because that roof in the pool has long been a problem, I think, and I'm glad to see that we're finally fixing it. but-
Well, so this won't address the roof, because
Boiler?
right, the boiler, the entire amount,
It's for the boiler.
that's right. So the original project, though, for fiscal '25 was
Okay, so we
supposed
already
to be
did the
for
roof.
both. So to your point,
Yeah.
the original estimate was even further off
Yeah.
because they had it at
Wow,
$180,000. And granted, there's a pretty healthy contingency, plus instead of moving the 87,000, we're moving the entire 100,000.
Okay.
Just for added contingency. Again, hopefully we don't need the contingency and it comes in under budget, but the bid is 284 and the cost estimate was 180.
Just don't come back to us with another amendment like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
They're hard to read.
It's already
Especially one
confusing.
It's that long.
I know, thank you,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, and I'm happy to give a brief explanation if you'd like. I know we discussed this before and it was the subject of the hearing, but just the very quick version of it is, again, we had the 225, 180,000 of that was supposed to be for the boiler based on the cost estimate, about 45,000 for the roof. I will say from PBC's review, and we appreciate all the time they spent on both elements of this project, and we'll come back to the roof again as we talk about the capital budget upcoming, because they think that number is a little light as well. But the priority right now is clearly the boiler, and also we are deauthorizing the $100,000 for pool deck surfacing repairs. There's some other alternative treatments we're looking at too, and again, a conversation we'll have in the capital budget. But yeah, so this now becomes a $325,000 total boiler project. Because that's over $250,000, you had to have the public hearing, which we had at the beginning of this meeting. Other than that, that's the request. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, motion passes unanimously by those present. Item G is call for a public hearing for the fiscal year 2025-2026.
Additional resolution or no?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. You have to do F,
have to do
or
Part B.
item F, letter B.
Okay. So be it resolved that Town Council approves Resolution 021125-7B. Whereas the project set forth on Schedule A below is no longer intended to be complete at this time and are therefore to be closed out. And whereas such closeout affects the appropriation and authorized unissued bond amounts of the project, and whereas Schedule A below sets forth the amount of reductions of the appropriation and the bond authorization, see column labeled reduction, for the project, and whereas after such reductions are made, the revised appropriation and authorized unissued bond amount for the project will be $0. Now therefore be it resolved that the project is set forth on Schedule A below is no longer intended to be completed because of the changes in circumstances, and that the appropriation and the bond authorization for the project is hereby reduced in the amount set forth on Schedule A, and that the revised appropriation and authorized unissued bond amount for the project is hereby determined to be $0.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Do we have a second? Mr. Walsh, thank you. Discussion?
This is just deauthorizing that other project.
Questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, motion passes unanimously by those present. Now moving on to item G, the call for a public hearing for the fiscal year 2025-2026 general operating budget, Water Pollution Control Department Fund operating budget, and Community Pool Fund operating budget. Mr. Jinks.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 021125-8. Be it resolved that the Town Council will hold a public hearing at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, March 18th, 2025, in Council Chambers, Town Hall, 84 South Main Street, Cheshire, Connecticut, to consider the proposed general fund operating budget for fiscal year 2025-2026, the proposed Water Pollution Control Department Fund operating budget for fiscal year 2025-2026, and the Community Pool Fund operating budget for fiscal year 2025-2026. And be it further resolved that the town manager shall cause a notice of said public hearing to be posted and published according to law. And be it further resolved that the date, time, and place, or any further postponements thereof, shall be determined by the town manager with the approval of the chairman of the council.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. This is simply a call for a public hearing, so I will call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously by those present. Item H is the authorization to apply for a PEGPESHA grant in the amount of $51,959 for improvements to audio-visual equipment in council chambers. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 021125-9. Be it resolved that the Town Council authorizes the application for Connecticut Public Utilities Regulatory Authority's Public Educational and Governmental Programming and Educational Technology Investment Account, PEGPESHA, grant program for replacement of audiovisual equipment in Town Council chambers for the recording and streaming of town meetings in the amount of $51,959. And be it further resolved that the town council authorizes town manager Sean M. Kimball to execute any and all agreements and documents necessary for said grant.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Jinks, thank you. Mr. Salamini, if you want to come out, I'll be happy to go in and direct the telecast for a little while. Actually, I'm sure Ms. Shepherd could speak on this one too. Although judging by the panic look on her face, she's going to throw it to Mr. Kimball.
I'll take this one, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. But I do want to actually give credit to both Noel Shepherd and Mike Salamini, who worked on this round of PECPISHA grant submittal, also last year and the year before. If you recall, last time we asked for significantly larger number as we did the upgrades here for the streaming capabilities, the audio, or the upgrades to the some of the broadcast equipment in the back there with Mike, but also these 4 displays and the ability to cast to them for public meetings. Was part of the last round of PECPISHA covered grant. This is a grant that is fully covered. There's no matching requirement, no dollars from the town to pay for these upgrades. And they're all intended to improve access, public access to these meetings, both in person here and broadcasting. Some of the projects we weren't able to get to, and also some that were sort of discovered along as you upgrade and modernize pieces of your streaming capabilities, you discover other pieces that are in fact 30 and 40 years old, like these, the system behind these microphones, the wiring you see here, even with the switching and whatnot, along with some of the equipment on the rack in the streaming room back there with Mike. And if you may have noticed, as they did some of these upgrades, that line of speakers over there on the south side of the building has been inoperable. It's able to be heard throughout, but you see there's 3 rows of speakers, and that one was determined to be end of life. They did comment how remarkable it was that all of the equipment we had lasted as long as it did. Many of these actual speakers and the wiring components behind these systems are literally 30-plus years old. And so this is an opportunity to upgrade all of those and improve the ability for the public to hear and participate in our meetings. And also, I think, your user experience up here at the dais a little bit. So, again, thank you to Noel and Mike, and I think that summarizes it.
I hate to tell you this, Mr. Kimball, but I was involved in the initial setup of these, so I do not take responsibility for the fact that they lasted that long, but I was involved in the setup of the chamber audio video system at the time. Questions for Mr. Kimball? Ms. Allard?
Not a question, just a comment, that I did get some feedback from a family member that the audio while watching from home is sometimes really difficult to decipher, so thank you very much for pursuing this. I think it's going to go a long way towards providing the community with other listening devices.
Appreciate that. And yes, to that point, I think some of the audio, as you hear on the playback at home, is difficult. The other thing is, I understand it, and Noel, jump in if I'm incorrect, but I know even controlling the volume of these from Mike's side is just impossible. You would expect if somebody's coming in a little quiet, he should be able to adjust something and pick them up. So if you watch, you'll hear some of us are quite loud and then some of us are faint. It's not an issue of being close to the microphone. It's just the actual system tied in is not working well. So this should improve all of that.
And with that, I'll call for a vote. All those, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Kramer.
That's okay. I just wanted to say I'm sensitive to ADA issues, and having to take some of these meetings on Zoom, having an improvement to being able to hear the meeting at home and still participate would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. And with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, motion passes unanimously by those present. Item I is consideration and possible appropriation of $5,500 of NEF funds for the Friends of Boulder Knoll to be used towards their proposed composting project. Ms. Pearson.
Be it resolved, the Town Council approves Resolution Number 021125-10. Be it resolved that pursuant to the recommendation of the Sustainability Committee, the Town Council appropriates $5,500 from the NIPS Environment Fee (NEF) Fund to the Friends of Boulder Knoll, Incorporated, to implement their composting program at the town-owned parcels on Boulder Road, as presented under the conditions that the Friends of Boulder Knoll, Incorporated obtain any permits required by the town for this project.
We have a motion by Ms. Pearson and a second by Mr. Jinks. Discussion, Ms. Pearson?
I would just say, I know at the beginning of this meeting, during public comment, Marjorie Chapman from Friends of Boulder Knoll presented and spoke to this proposal. They came in front of the Sustainability Committee several times to share the plan of action, which is building a comprehensive composting site. They currently have a rolling site, but they'll have a more comprehensive site that will serve all of the farmers at Boulder Knoll in terms of the amended soil that can be returned to Boulder Knoll, but it will also serve as a pilot site for the community where folks can drop off their food waste, diverting it from the waste stream, and introducing and educating our community about the value of composting in our town.
Questions? Mr. Jinks?
When do you anticipate being able to have the public come bring their waste to you guys?
We are aiming for an Earth Day launch.
Oh, nice. Good.
Kind of appropriate.
Appropriate, yes, very. Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, thank you. I met with them during the sustainability time, several times they came to us, and I still had some questions. I had asked them to look into possibly a Boy Scout project for this, rather than asking the town for funds. And I guess they did check with them, and they said it was a bigger project than they thought, and they wouldn't be able to do it in the timeline they wanted it done. And I do have a few concerns. I appreciate that, they took the time and found people who will donate materials, who will donate their labor. And if you look at our packet here, you'll see that it was $6,600, and they decided to remove $1,100 from that for the food scrap containers, and they would have each resident pay for those. So that's why it's at $5,500. But I do have, having run a nonprofit in this town for 20 years, I understand how hard it is and how hard it is to get funding. But, it's out there. I just feel like in the NEF fund, we started doing the school food recycling, and we're going to have to be doing the rest of the schools probably in the fiscal year 26-27, and there's not enough in there to cover all the schools, but there is a good amount in there that will help us. And as we come into budget season and we're facing a very difficult budget, $5,500, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is still a good amount of money. And I'm not so sure how often the town has given grants to nonprofits. I understand they give sometimes service things, but giving grants to nonprofits in this town, I just have an issue with at times, because I think it's something that, we should really look to our taxpayers and say, is this the best use of our funds, especially when, we're asking our residents to tighten their belts, and you're going to have to be paying more taxes each year. So I just have a tough time approving this grant for them. Nothing against composting, nothing against the group, nothing against the people who work hard for it. I appreciate all they do. But I think there are other avenues out there that we may be able to find some people who can donate to help get this project done for you. You were great in getting it down by, $6,000. Half of it down. If we can get the other half done, maybe there's a generous person in the community who would help donate money. There's a lot of generous people in this town, but to be taking it from the town, I just have a tough time doing that, especially in the environment we're going to be facing with the budget we're coming up with. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Pearson?
I guess I would just see it a little differently. I don't see this taking from the town. I see it as actually investing in an opportunity in our community. We know that there is a waste management crisis in this state. We know that we are shipping tons of our waste outside of this state. And so if we can begin to pilot programs, we're already piloting 2 programs in Chapman Elementary and at Doolittle Elementary in terms of helping children to understand the value of diverting food waste from our waste streams. And so I think anything that we can do in terms of investing in those places in our community, and Boulder Knoll, it is a community-owned space. And so providing an opportunity to educate members of our community about the value. And ultimately, hopefully, we will be seeing cost savings. And so that's why I see it as an investment. And it does start with education and informing our community about the value of diverting food waste. And so I'm hoping that this will start something. There are several aerobic food composting or waste diversion composting sites in our state. It would be great to have one that is community-owned in our town. And so that way folks can also see the difference between the anaerobic that is provided in our schools right now with the Southington facility and aerobic facilities in our town on a town farm. So I see it as an investment, not necessarily taking away. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson.
Sorry.
Well, sure.
I did ask Sean to find out from Vin how much it would cost for us to do the recycling, food recycling. We haven't gotten that numbers yet.
No, we didn't have a response yet, no.
So roughly, though, in the schools that we've done, it was roughly $11,000 for each. The bigger schools would probably be a little bit more than that. So we have Dodd, the high school, and the 2 new schools. So that's 4 we're going to have to do. So we're probably looking at about $50,000, $60,000 for that. Okay. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm saying I think the use of the town funds for this, when we have to already do it, the recycling in our schools, we're taking the funds from that, so we're going to have to make up the funds somewhere along the line. So that's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Kramer and then Ms. Allard.
Is there anybody here that can answer a few questions on the NEF funds? If I have a few questions?
Yeah, we have, well, yeah, I mean, are you talking about the NEF funds?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right now, we have gathered, it's almost $60,000 in NEF funds over the years since we've been receiving those funds. Right now, we have $28,900 unallocated. If we do allocate this $5,500, we'll have 23, just over like 23.5 left.
Are there any stipulations on where these funds can be diverted?
Well, okay, that's a good point, actually. Right now, it can be used for anything to do with cleanup or waste diversion, dealing with waste management in a community. There is legislation out right now that would limit it just to cleanup. So there is a possibility, and I don't know how viable that legislation is, that sometime after this session, we couldn't use this for food waste diversion programs, and that's how we have used these funds for now. We did explore as a committee some of the different options in terms of cleanup. For example, purchasing a vehicle to pick up the nip bottles, because we know that's an issue in town. But that was incredibly expensive, much more than this amount would provide for us. So I honestly think right now investing in some of our composting programs, I think we've used our funds very, very wisely as a municipality, starting in our schools, especially now that there is, as Councilor Walsh alluded to, some legislation that is going to be requiring food waste diversion and composting in our larger schools at the high school in Dodd, for example. But we've started pilot programs in the elementary schools, so we're actually ahead of the game. And we went to, I know I was at a Zoom webinar with in the audience here and with the Connecticut Coalition for Strategic Materials Management. And we are ahead of the game in terms of a number of municipalities and wisely using our NEF funds in this way. So I'm quite proud of our town for that, for being creative in our use and being ahead of the game in terms of schools and already introducing these programs in our schools. So we have a plan in place because many municipalities were trying to struggle and figure out how are we going to have composting in our schools. And get this in place in time. By June of 2026 is when it will be mandated in schools of a certain size.
So to Don's point with the NEF funds, the NEF funds, I agree we are coming into a very difficult budget process. And every penny is going to count. And there are a lot of pennies that we're going to have to give a lot of really deep and soul-searching thought to. But from what I'm understanding now, thank you, Fiona, for your incredibly eloquent explanation, is these NEF funds that we'd be allocating to an investment in composting wouldn't be able to be spent on debt relief or taken from this part of the budget and spent somewhere else. It has to be specifically allocated to a very finite spend, and this spend fits in with the guidelines. So I don't see it as misspending funds or keeping it from a general purpose. So I think that's a really good place to allocate these funds at this particular time, even with an incredibly tight budget coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Ms. Allard?
I think Ms. Kramer expressed my concern as well. Mr. Walsh, I really appreciate your perspective, and honestly, I really feel the diverse ideas and thoughts that we have on the council really, provide important insight to important issues, and so I appreciate that. I'm with you that we absolutely need to be very careful with this year's budget. And thank you for asking that question, Ms. Kramer, because I think that I don't know that I would have questioned it that way, but the answer was exactly what I needed to hear, I think. And Ms. Pearson, I just had a follow-up question with respect to, you alluded to there's a potential return on investment if we go forward with allocating these funds. Is there any information on what time frame we might be able to see a return on investment, what that might look like? Is there any, why are you saying that? Can you provide some insight on that?
Yeah, the answer is complicated, right? And I don't have an answer. All I will say is that we do know that we are in a waste crisis management with the closing of Mira, with our shipping tons of our waste outside of the state. We're having to rethink how we're going to be dealing with waste in our municipalities, which is why the Connecticut Coalition for Strategic Materials Management was formed by DEEP a couple of years ago. And so our town, I believe it was before my time on the town council, I believe it was when you were chair of solid waste, when it was then solid waste, actually joined CCSM so we could learn from other municipalities how they're going to be dealing with this pending crisis. And so what we do know is that we are, particularly, for example, with this legislation with the schools across the state are now going to have to compost. We don't have facilities in the state yet to manage all that necessary composting, so we anticipate there is going to be building of businesses across the state, just like we have that Southington, and I know many of you went and toured the anaerobic digestion site. We're going to need more of that. So when are we going to see that ROI? Unclear. There is a whole business that needs to be developed, right, to address this waste crisis that we're dealing with. But I feel like our community is moving in the right step by at least beginning to divert that waste from our waste stream, right? The less that we can put into our waste stream, the better off we are. And so supporting any kinds of initiatives that are just reducing waste in general, and in this case, diverting waste and educating the community about these issues will serve us in the long term. How much are we going to save? When is it going to be? I mean, quite honestly, right now, frankly, composting is going to be more expensive. So using Blue Earth compost in our schools, that's more expensive than sending it right now to AJ. But we know it's the right thing to do, and we know ultimately, long-term, we will see the benefits from that. So it's more a strategic, long-term planning process, I would argue.
Sure.
So thank you very much for that. And I have a question about, would the facility at Boulder Knoll have the capacity? So the way it's written now, it's really just for residential use?
20 to 30 residents.
Okay, 20 to 30. So it would not have the capacity to offset some of the school waste? No. Okay.
No, and the school waste is different just because what is going to be built at Boulder Knoll, what they're planning to build, is going to be aerobic. And so you can't put meat. There are some items you can't compost in an aerobic facility. Whereas what they have in Southington, because of the process, is anaerobic. And so basically anything the students have at lunchtime can go into the composting. So there are different types of composting. And so this is actually an opportunity to educate the community about the different kinds of composting too. And it's for those folks, and especially I think what Boulder Knoll is proposing, those folks who live in condos, who live in homes where maybe they don't want to be composting, this provides them with an opportunity to compost elsewhere, off-site. because not everybody has the opportunity to engage in food waste diversion wherever they live. So this does provide an opportunity for folks in town who otherwise would not have that opportunity.
I do have another question.
Go ahead.
Okay, I don't mean to be.
No, that's
I don't
okay.
mean to be obtuse. If we did not use these funds for these efforts, what, if any, within the budget would potentially have the opportunity to use these funds?
So I can take that one. And it's a good opportunity because I will just briefly read from the Public Act 2158, which established the fund. And again, as Fiona mentioned, it is potentially subject to change, but as of right now, there's no legislation that has changed it. There were two main areas that are intended to be funded with the NIPS revenue. These are municipalities shall expend on environmental measures intended to reduce the generation of solid waste. So that's in line with the composting proposal we've discussed and in the schools as well, or to reduce the impact of litter caused by such solid waste, right? So it's either to reduce the generation of or to reduce litter. The bill actually then gets into a little more detail on the litter side of things, such as including but not limited to the hiring of a recycling coordinator, the installation of storm drain filters designed to block solid waste and beverage container debris, or the purchase of a mechanical street sweeper, vacuum, or broom that removes litter, including but not limited to such beverage containers and other debris from streets, sidewalks, and abutting lawns and turf areas. So, again, an answer to your question, on the side of reducing litter, there's probably equipment, nothing proposed currently in the Public Works budget or CNR proposed budget, at least that I'm aware of at the moment. We had those conversations early on in Solid Waste, now Sustainability Committee, about just accruing these funds for some time until we were ready to purchase a street sweeper. I think recognizing we were getting about, $20,000 to so $1,000 a year, it was going to take a significant amount of time to get $400,000 or $500,000 to buy a street sweeper. So nothing directly in the budget. We don't have a recycling coordinator per se. You could make an argument. We could supplement some of this money for offsetting some of the salary of existing staff who do, like our Deputy Director of Public Works or somebody who has responsibility over certain sustainability efforts. You might be able to make that case there. But again, nothing specific dollar for dollar, with the again, as you saw there, there's sort of anti-litter purchases and then reducing the generation of solid waste. So I think that just ties back into, again, as we'll have a little conversation later tonight, our upcoming potential contract with AJ does include some ideas around additional drop-offs and as we've been expanding our monthly drop-offs for residents to take advantage of at the Public Works facility. You could certainly offset those costs to the extent they're helping with reducing the generation of municipal solid waste, but again, that would be probably the only other area that's close. That answers the question. Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Mr. Jinks?
So not to, we don't want to discontinue the conversation about solid waste too soon. So I just want to mention, as a proud former member of the Solid Waste Committee, the NEF funds continue to come in. I don't think it was mentioned earlier, but we continue to get these funds every year. And it's based on the number of nip bottles that are sold, what's that? For now, yeah. But I think it seems like those numbers have been going up a little bit the last couple of years, a little bit. And the other thing is that with solid waste it is a crisis, obviously. I think Marge mentioned that as much as 30% of our solid waste is food waste. I've heard even larger numbers. It's more like 40 or 45%, I think, in some places, or it can be. So composting is probably inevitably going to be a part of the solution, especially with recycling of plastics and cardboard, not being valuable anymore. How much of that we're going to continue to do is a question mark as well. So I think it's good for us to be thinking in ways of reducing our solid waste stream, and this is a very good one, a good way to be doing that. So just want to voice my support of the general idea of composting and this project at Boulder Knoll as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes by a vote of 5-1 of those present. Item J is the approval of stipulated tax agreement. Ms. Allard.
Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 021125-11. Be it resolved that the town council approves the stipulated tax agreement between the town of Cheshire and Cheshire Center LLC for property located at 114 South Main Street as presented. And be it further resolved that the town attorney is authorized and directed to execute on behalf of the town said agreement in the form and upon the terms and conditions as presented at the meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Walsh, thank you. Mr. D'Onofrio, do you want to take this, or Mr. Kimball?
Sure. So this is 114 South Main Street. It's a three-story multi-tenant retail office facility built in 1971. The fair market value that's being stipulated to is $970,000. That's a reduction from $997,300, the current 100% value. So it's a nominal reduction. What we did with it was Chris McCardle, Cappy Amadio, and I looked at it. We looked at the income and expense statements that were filed with the town, ran the numbers, came up with what we thought was a fair value, and presented it to the plaintiff, and they accepted it.
Questions for Mr. D'Onofrio? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously by those present. Thank you, Mr. D'Onofrio. I appreciate the work on this one. Number 9 is the town manager's report and communications. In your packets is 9B, the department status reports for police, fire, and economic development. And with that, Mr. Kimball.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will start, and you do have a handout here, Town Manager's Report in front of you. I'll start with the announcement of the 2024 grand list and also tax assessment appeal deadline. The October 1, 2024 grand list was officially filed at the end of January per state statute. The grand list rose from $3.994 billion in 2023 to $4.032 billion, an increase of $37.5 million, or about 1%. Real estate assessed values increased by $56 million, or 1.63%, to a grand total of $3.5 billion of real estate value. Personal property increased by $9 million, or 4.27%, to $220 million, and motor vehicle values decreased by $27.6 million, or a reduction of 8.1%, to a total of $313 million, which I'll explain a little bit now. Again, the results of this grand list present a little bit of a mixed bag with respect to the impact on the upcoming budget. While overall, $37.5 million increase in total value is a relatively strong year, it's important to note that 1.3% of that 1.63% in real estate value increases is made up of the Stonebridge Crossing development, so an increase of $45.3 million alone. And revenues from those properties must be set aside for obligations within the tax increment finance district, so only 25% of those, the taxes generated from those properties are available to the general fund if the town council chooses to sweep them from the TIF account. Furthermore, the state has mandated a new valuation process for automobiles, hence the $27 million reduction in value. The new mandated valuation process is now a straight depreciation calculation from MSRP values. So this new methodology will save most taxpayers some money this year, but the result for the town's grand list is a loss of, again, $27.6 million of value, which equates to about $750,000 of tax revenue at our current mill rate. So the net effect of the total growth of the grand list after this methodology change and the proportion of properties in the TIF district, as I mentioned above, means that ultimately the grand list, for purposes of developing the fiscal 26 town and school budget, is effectively flat. As a reminder, property owners wishing to appeal their 2024 grand list real estate business personal property assessment or their 23 supplemental motor vehicle assessment before the Board of Assessment Appeals must submit a written application to the Board of Assessment Appeals on or before February 20th by 4 p.m. These forms are available on our website, cheshirecity.org, or from the assessor's office in person. Any questions, you can also reach out to the assessor's office. And again, just remember the deadline of February 20th, 2025. Quick update on Bartlam Park South. Again, as I mentioned last month, repaving of the Bartlam Park parking lots, access drives, skate park remain scheduled for this spring. The band shell is currently under fabrication by Polygon, which we've just received word that there will be a mid-March delivery of the band shell. Dorita and Sons Construction is expected to be back on site this month to begin forming the foundations to receive the band shell. So you'll see some more activity here in the coming month. Turning the page, again, just a reminder that the elderly and 100% disabled tax credit application period is active now, February 1st through May 15th. Income thresholds and credit amounts are available on the town website. And more information, you can also reach out to our assessor's office at 203-271-6620. Cheshire Public Library, February is Love Your Library Month. There is a series of social media posts that are featuring library staff and the public where participants are expressing what they individually love about our library. In-person raffles and prizes are also offered as part of the Love Your Library events. Also mark your calendars this coming Saturday, February 15th at 2 p.m. Goza, a Latin jazz band, will be offering a free concert in the Mary Baldwin Room. Bring your Valentine, for it will be certainly an electrifying afternoon. Cheshire Senior Center is hosting Signs of a Scam. Join members of the Cheshire Police Department at the Senior Center for important conversation into scams and crimes targeting older adults in our community. Learn helpful prevention tips, types of scams, and prevention methods to avoid being a victim. This event is going to be held this Thursday, February 13th at 1 p.m. Call the Senior Center for more information at 272-8286 to register. An update on our new Emergency Operations Center in the basement of Town Hall. The Olympic Construction of New Haven was selected as the general contractor for the construction of the EOC. The contractor's begun the project submittal process with activity of record, and the contractor will be mobilizing in the coming weeks with demolition framing work to begin soon thereafter. And last but certainly not least, just a reminder that the Public Information Survey for the 2026 Plan of Conservation and Development is live from Tai Chi Planning. And again, the Plan of Conservation and Development is an advisory document, but that serves as the municipality's official action plan for its future land use, development, and conservation goals. So we are encouraging everybody who is available to participate and give your feedback for how you see the vision for you'd like to see the town developed over the next decade and beyond. And for upcoming council meetings, this list is going to grow as we enter March, fair warning. We do have tentatively, I think, scheduled, although it may be moving, the Ordinance Review Committee, February 20th, I think it moved into March. We have a special meeting of the Town Council on February 25th, our regular meeting March 11th, and the public hearing that we just called for on March 18th, followed by a healthy dose of budget workshops to come. So that concludes my report. But I do encourage folks to take a look at, I know Peter mentioned the police fire, particularly the economic development report. It's got a lot of colored, beautiful pictures of developments at Stonebridge and beyond. So take a minute to take a look at some of those if you get a chance. Thank you.
The ordinance review is being moved, and there is an extra item being added to it. So ORC members, stay tuned for that. To my colleagues, don't forget that Tuesday, February 25th is have your picture taken at work day. So please dress appropriately. Questions for Mr. Kimball? Mr. Walsh?
Thank you. Just a quick question, Sean. So the Bartlam Park, is that on schedule to be up and being used for like the Bartlam Beats and Fall Festival and things like that, or?
Yeah, so that is the plan, knock on wood. I was getting a little nervous when we hadn't heard a fabrication date confirmation until about, I think, a week ago or 10 days ago. And I was very encouraged to hear that it's set for delivery in early March, which is, or early to mid-March, which is about a month away. So I'm much more confident than maybe I was as I hadn't heard anything for a while. But yes, the goal is to have that completed, by late spring. And again, Bartlam Beats being probably the first major event there, usually kicks off, I think, in mid-July. So that should give us some time. But again, there's a lot more work, also obviously site work and prep and things that have to be completed once it's final. So So far, I've not heard otherwise, but that, right now, I'm encouraged that it's going to be at least, the construction will start in the next month or so.
Mr. Jinks?
Actually, I had a question for Andrew with the economic development summary you gave us in the packet. Just very simply, I happen to notice Barnes & Noble, I think, announced the September 17th opening. What about the rest of the complex? Like, what are the opening dates? Are they about the same time, or?
Yeah, so the Whole Foods, TJ Maxx, and Barnes & Noble, which is the main anchor tenant and the junior tenants, they're all scheduled to open, again, barring supply and everything else, for this coming holiday shopping season. So I've heard October, but I'm thinking it's more around the November timeframe. So actually, the signage applications are beginning to come in too for not only the building signage, but then also for the signage along Route 10. So it's actually going to town beautification tomorrow morning. Sure.
Other questions? Mr. Kimball, with regard to the EOC, is there an estimated completion time for that?
I would check, I don't know if, Dan, do you have a date yet? I know they're just getting started.
Just ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect that they'd be done from start date 2 months at the most later.
Oh, okay.
Pre-construction meeting Monday of this week with the contractor, and they're finalizing their schedule based on some last lead times that they're waiting for on some of the equipment. So by next meeting, we'll have a concrete idea of where the schedule stands.
And while we're dialoguing here, I want to thank the Public Works crew for all their prep work that they did in the basement and getting things ready for the contractor. And I assume there's no concern with disruption to town hall operations while that's going on because it's basement and.
Yeah, we'll be able to provide access through the lower level garage door. They'll be entering and exiting through there with all of their operations.
Perfect. Thank you. And with that, we will move on to reports of committees of the council, starting with chairman's report to my left with Mr. Wolf.
Nothing to report, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Allard?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Jinks?
So as far as budget committee goes, obviously, we're going to start our workshops in March. Just had a meeting with Sean just the other day to discuss some changes in how we're going to approach things this year. We're going to kind of streamline the process a little bit as far as some of the sort of smaller, lower budget departments. We're not going to kind of go through line by line necessarily. We're going to focus on the larger departments that also happen to have capital projects that we can kind of do those together: police, fire, public works, so on and so forth, schools. So, and we're also going to try having the workshops in a few different locations. So, Arts Place, fire department, perhaps the wastewater treatment plant, and so on and so forth. So, going to try and kind of shine a light on the fact that it isn't just a budget of numbers; it's also services and people and also kind of perhaps bring people to some of the places in town that are the tax dollars are going to provide services for. So more on this later, but that's just a little brief snapshot of what we just talked about a matter of 2 days ago. So or yesterday. Was it yesterday?
Seems like 2 days ago. Yeah. Ms. Pearson?
Sustainability Committee met and we'll be discussing in executive session the municipal solid waste contract. So.
Excellent. Item I is the appointment of members of the Town Council, Board of Education, and Energy Commission to an Energy Performance Contract Review Working Group. Those appointments are for the Town Council, Fiona Pearson; for Board of Education, Tim White; and from the Energy Commission, Chris Smith. Item II is referral of amendments to Parks and Recreation Commission ordinance to the Ordinance Review Committee. Nothing for B miscellaneous. Item 11 is appointments, starting with A, liaison reports To my left, Mr. Wolf. Ms. Allard.
No report.
Mr. Jinks. Ms. Pearson.
Energy Commission was just working on the POCD plan recommendations, and Parks and Rec, we talked about already, the STEEP grant. We talked a little bit about that.
And Mr. Walsh.
Town beautification, I missed last month's meeting, but I did read the minutes, and it seems like they picked out 20 trees they want to plant along South Main Street, and letters went out to the owners. So South Main Street will be getting some new trees, hopefully in the next year or so. And tomorrow is, they postponed the meeting to tomorrow, so I'll report at the next meeting.
What did they settle on for trees?
Oh, boy. They have different various types. Depends on if you want small, medium, or large size. I mean, I don't know if Andrew could probably.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say,
So
yeah.
tomorrow they'll be approving the list of property owners, and then they'll be going out, meeting with the property owners. They have different varieties of small, medium, and large trees for each of the properties. And then at your next meeting, you'll be getting the list of properties as well as the trees. So
Excellent.
stay tuned.
Okay, more to come.
More to come.
Excellent. Yeah, green
Yeah,
ones.
they're green. They're- hopefully they're green. I mean-
Wooden green ones, yeah.
We've had really good, just if I could, we've had really good feedback from the property owners that we contacted. So of the letters that went out, only 2 property owners weren't interested in participating in the program. So we'll probably have more interest than funds this year. So all good. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And now for appointments.
This is, Mr. Veliber, this is his big night every year, but I mean, for some reason, he's
He's
given
gonna
it.
be sad he missed it.
Yeah, so we have a number of appointments to commissions, and just bear with me as I go down this list. Beautification Committee, 2-year, Jessica Fisher, term is February 1st, 2025 to July 31st, 2027, and she is a Republican. Donald Dobbs to the Economic Development Commission, 4 years, February 3rd, 25 till 1/31/29, he's unaffiliated. Rich Ogurek to the Energy Commission, February 1st, 2025 to January 31st, 2029, he is a Republican. Randy Raines to the Environment Commission, 4 years. Term is 2/14/25 to 1/31/29. He is a Republican. Gail Naito to the Historic District Alternate, February 1st, 2025 to January 31st, 2028. She is a Republican. John Torello to the Historic District Alternate, January 10th, 2025 to January 31st, 2028. He is unaffiliated. Greg Geyer to the Inland Wetlands Commission, 4 years, from starting June 14th, 2025 to January 31st, 2029. Donna Lodniski to the Performing and Fine Arts Commission, February 1st, 2025 to January 31st, 2028. Donna Myjack to the Performing and Fine Arts Commission, February 1st, 2025 to January 31st, 2028. She is a Republican. Public Building Commission, Whitney Watts Jr., 11/15/2025. Should we be doing that, 11/15? I don't know. Not until November 15th,
Of
2025, his commission starts?
when it starts?
That's what I have here. Yeah, he's a reappointment.
Let me, give me 1 second, I'll double check on it.
Okay. I'll skip that one and come back to that one. Diana Waldron, February 1st, 2025, January 31st, 2029, that's the Public Building Commission. She is unaffiliated. Ron Lakaitis, January 31st, 2025 to January 31st, 2029. He is a Republican. Paul Orlowski is replacing Doherty from beginning February 1st, 2025 to January 31st, 2029. Robert Glover for the Public Safety Commission, January 11th, 2025 to January 31st, 2029. He is a Republican. Michael Evans to the Retirement Board, February 1st, 2025 to January 31st, 2029, and he is a Republican. So going back to Whitney Watts.
That one's okay. All that needs to happen, the term, their term listed here, they must have filled
Oh,
an
okay.
existing term, so they didn't start until 11/15/22.
Okay.
And went until 1/31/25. But the term of office, and it's a 4-year term, so the term of office should read 2/11/25, which is today.
Okay.
Through 1/31/29.
Okay.
If you want to make that correction, and
Yeah, I'll
then
make it on the one that I give it to you,
I'll
too.
sign it, and we'll move them down.
Okay, and that's all I have.
So I will ask Mr. Wolf for a second on those, and I will turn the microphone over to you for your list.
All right, settle in, folks.
Yep. We usually vote on all of them together unless Mr. D'Onofrio tells me that, okay. We will vote, I promise. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay, here we go. Okay, Susan Dillman, appointing to the Beautification Committee. The renomination term is 2/11/25 to 1/31/27. She's a Democrat. Maria Kolak-Cry, I'm sorry if I got your name wrong, renomination to the Beautification Committee, 2/11/25, 1/31/27, Democrat. Joanne Giddings, new appointment to the Beautification Committee, term 2/11/25, 1/31/27, she's a Democrat. Courtney Cullinan, renomination to the Economic Development Commission, 2/11/25, 1/31/29, she is a Democrat. Ryan Shannon, the new appointment to the Energy Commission, 2/11/25 to 1/31/29, he is a Democrat. Matt Smith is a new appointment to the Energy Commission, term is 2/11/25 to 1/31/29, he's a Democrat. Peter Prohaska is a renomination to the Environment Commission, 2/11/25, 1/31/29 is the term. He's a Democrat. Sean Henry is a renomination to the Environment Commission. Term is 2/11/25 to 1/31/29. He's a Democrat. Kevin Daly is a new appointment to the Historic District Commission. Term is 2/11/25 to 1/31/30. He's a Democrat. Charles Dimick is a renomination to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission. Term is 2/11/25 to 1/31/29. He's a Democrat. Chuck Thompson is a new appointment to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission. Term is 2/11/25 to 1/31/29. He's a Democrat. John Parasino is a renomination to the Park and Rec Commission. Term is 2/11/25, 1/31/29. He's unaffiliated. Heather Fitzgerald is a new appointment to the Park and Recreation Commission, 2/11/25, 1/31/29 is the term. She's a Democrat. Patricia Mottola is a new appointment to the Performing and Fine Arts Commission. Term is 2/11/25 to 1/31/29. She's a Democrat. Matt Hall, the new appointment to the Public Safety Commission. Term is 2/11/25 to 1/31/29. He's a Democrat. Jeff Pangaro is a renomination to the Retirement Board. Term of office 2/11/25 to 1/31/29. He's a Democrat. Carol Doheny is a new appointment to the Water Pollution Control Authority. Term 2/11/25, 1/31/28. She's a Democrat. Ned Cullinan is a new appointment to the Water Pollution Control Authority. Term 2/11/25 to 1/31/28. He's a Democrat.
Second.
Oh, no, I'm not done yet.
Oh.
He's taking a break.
I thought you were done.
Margie Rogers, new appointment to the Youth and Human Services Committee, 2/11/25 to 1/31/27. She's a Democrat. Marlena Sobel, renomination to the Youth and Human Services Committee, 2/11/25 to 1/31/27. She's a Democrat. Christina Velu, new appointment to the Youth and Human Services Committee, alternate. Term is 2/11/25 to 1/31/27, Democrat. Lastly, Sally LaRusso, new appointment to the Youth and Human Services Committee, 2/11/25, 1/31/27 is the term. She's a Democrat, and that is it. Mr. Walsh.
Second.
We have a slew of appointments, and I will call for a vote. All those in favor, motion, the appointees pass unanimously by the president. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
So all these new appointments, Sean, Noel, what is the process for making sure everyone comes in and gets, does their, takes the oath and gets communicated to about the next meeting, stuff like that?
These will go to Noel.
Yeah,
Noel will give them to Patty King, our town clerk.
okay,
And the town clerk will remind people gently that they have to be sworn in.
and then the committees, various committees, commissions will start to communicate with the new
Yes.
people.
Letter out, an email out to all of those folks,
Yeah,
explaining the process and telling them they have to get sworn in. And then she also sends the staff liaisons notification that their board members have changed.
okay, all right, good, thanks.
Okay, that concludes item 11. Item 12 is the town attorney's report. Mr. D'Onofrio, anything for us? Item 13 is council communications. I will provide Ms. Shepherd with an email that all of us received from, and I won't be able to find it now. Nope, here it is. With an email that we all received from an individual who could not be here to speak during public comment. The woman's name is Karen C. Scala from 55 Lewis Drive in Meriden, and I will provide that to Ms. Shepherd for the record. With that, there's nothing for miscellaneous, which brings us to items for executive session, contract negotiations, municipal solid waste collection contract, as well as pending litigation, the stipulated tax agreement. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to include everyone at the dais, along with Ms. Shepherd, Mr. Martelli. I see Mr. Jascott ready to run out of the building, so he is not staying.
Mr. Bombero.
Mr. Bombero, are you,
Yes.
you will be joining us. So, Mr. Bombero, Mr. Martelli, Ms. Shepherd, and the dais. I will entertain a motion. Thank you, Mr. Jinks, and seconded by Ms. Pearson. All those in favor? I saw a hand from Mr. Walsh. It is unanimous. We are in executive session. No motion to follow other than adjournment. Thank you all.